Alright, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on to Curious Minds. As we once again have another game from this time the European closed qualifier for the DreamHack Masters Last Chance Tournament. It's a best of 5, and it's between two players who, I mean, we've seen so many games between them. They have played before. We all know them. We love them. They are great. In the top left-hand corner for Team Liquid, it is Clem. And in the bottom right, always in contention for being one of the best players in the world. You know him. You love him. He's the Italian stallion from Clash. It's Reynor. And like, where do you start with Clem versus Reynor? I mean, so many matches between these two. So many matches. And, I mean, it's just, these are two players that, of course, came to prominence around the same time. Of course, Reynor, I think, hit his stride a little bit before Clem. But Clem was always there in the background. And then when Clem finally started to get the good results, it was constantly him versus Reynor, Clem versus Cyril. You know, Clem facing off against Hero Marine. And they have played so many matches that the history between these two players is so documented that honestly, you can look and you can find the trends and you could probably accurately predict this match. And really, I mean, the trends that you want to look at for especially this one in TVZ is most certainly, I mean, Clem, of course, versus Reynor in particular has right now a really good win rate, especially in best of 5s. Reynor will, of course, take a series off of him and has taken many series off of him, but I think Clem has the winning record, at least recently. But, with that being said, Reynor's kind of got back into form. Reynor took a break after the World Championships that he won. Took a break from him. And kind of had his vacation. Came back, wasn't, you know, in perfect form. Was still playing extremely well considering that. And has now, I think, really started to get into form. And is playing like the Reynor that we know. And the Reynor that a lot of people kind of fell in love with. And the reason why is the reason why they support him. And so, now when it comes to these two playing for this last chance qualifier in this best of 5, I think it's hard to call, really, because, you know, it depends on how they're playing. You know, I think Clem, one of the things you definitely could have said in the past, especially like a month or two ago, was, has Clem fixed his TVZ? And this was mostly for against Korean Zergs, where Clem was having a lot of trouble, actually, in the Terran versus Zerg matchup, where it came... where I think what it ended up coming down to was he was being very greedy. And the Korean Zerg would just kind of punish him. They'd constantly apply pressure. They'd constantly, you know, attack. And he wasn't quite ready for it. Because players like Reynor and Cyril, they really embrace the late game when they know that the Terran, you know, can defend. But not someone like Dark. Dark is going to keep attacking you until you keel over and die. And so Reynor was having a lot of trouble in the matchup in that sense. Of course, not as much so versus his European counterparts, but was having trouble there. Of course, Clem, I think, always the biggest critiques of him and why people, you know, say that he's not the best Terran, you know, at the moment. Why it is Maru is because of his TVZ, of course, or his TVT, where his TVT just is not up to par with that of other Terrans. Now, we do have a small attack here coming through for Clem. I didn't mention it, but there was an army put down, and this is a very, very early Hellbat attack. This is even faster than the usual, and Clem going to immediately get on top of these queens. There's really not a lot of them out, but 6 roaches in production. As long as Reynor can, you know, keep these queens alive for long enough, and these roaches are able to pop out, then he should be able to hold it. But now the Marine and the Hellbat going to move on up. More Hellions coming on through, and they're going to be morphed in very, very shortly. But here are the roaches, 4 already in the main base. Those Hellions going to go straight for the mineral line, though, and that's really where the story is at. There's so many workers here. Only 3 go down. There's some great splits by Reynor. Should only lose the 5 drones, and that's absolutely worthwhile considering how much Clem just invested there. And to explain what the build was, it was Barracks Factory Armory for Clem. This really early attack, which is, I mean, kind of interesting to see, because usually when you're looking at a Hellbat attack, it's going to come right around the 6-minute mark. You know, 5:30, 6 minutes. Where you're going to have, you know, 4, 6 Hellions with the Marines, with a medevac. That was not the case here for Clem. who wanted to try and get that damage a little bit earlier, is now getting double bunkers up. Realizes that it's going to be very easy to be counterattacked while he's trying to get into tanks. And there are the roaches coming on through. Bunker's already up. Reynor just going to back on up and then just onto that drone key. As 8 more at a time, Reynor recognizing that, hey, listen, I have map control right now. I have the roaches out. There's not much that Clem can do to contest this. And that was all because Reynor had a good read on the situation. You know, had the roach warren up at the right time for the safety. Immediately was into the roaches, used the queens to kind of delay for as long as possible. And now is actually in a very, very good spot this game as he's sitting up, you know, a decent amount of workers. I think you're going to want to expand that lead fairly shortly as it's 56 to 47, only 9 in the lead for the Italian Zerg. But he's, of course, focusing right now on the lair, on getting up the Evo chamber. There we go, another round of drones coming through with the inject. And it looks like right now Reynor is actually going to go roaches. Interestingly enough, roaches is kind of what you usually, I think, pair with a player like Dark, who is a lot more willing to go roaches. And I'd even say a laser is also very willing to use roaches. But it's going to get into the +1/+1, the glial reconstitution. Of course, you already made some for defense, so it makes sense. Hey, I'm just going to use a roach-based army. Of course, you're still going to get into Hydralisks and into Lurkers, but this is going to be the brunt of it for now. As +1/+1 is on the way for Clem. Has, of course, the third base established, and we should be seeing, I believe, that second factory pop down fairly shortly. There we go. As the Overseer just hanging at the side of the base, trying to see what's going on, saying hi, seeing what Clem is doing, and kind of getting a vibe check on the Terran base. There you go, checks out the rest of it. But Reynor is going to be going into this composition that, again, I usually would kind of, or is kind of more of the Korean Zerg style. With the Roach Ravager getting into the early infestation pit, you're going to get out those infestors for, of course, the amazing combination of fungal growth and corrosive bile. And sitting at 68 workers right now, I mean, Reynor's not producing anymore, so you know what that means, guys. It's been a while. We haven't seen it, you know, since a certain GSL finals made everyone do this build for the longest time, but it's going to be the 1/1 Roach push at around 180 supply. And is Clem going to be ready for it is the question, because this is a build that requires some very specific preparation. Now, Clem does have a very good tank spread at home. He's just pushing with a few Marines to try and apply pressure. But Clem has actually gone to double tank production. Has such a good read on this situation, actually. Because double tank production with +1 on the way, that's going to limit Reynor's options. Because you already are sitting at 6 tanks with only 5 corrupt or Ravagers. You're not really going to have enough corrosive biles to get rid of all these tanks. And so Clem right now is so well defended, and this is a really interesting style, because usually what you see from Clem is he will go for the second factory, oh no. I was going to say he's going to go for Widow Mines, but is Clem looking to push out here? I don't know if this is the right idea. Okay, I was going to, okay. He's just establishing a fourth. We're all good. We're all good. Nothing crazy happening. Clem is not going to be trying to push out just yet, but it's sitting at 173 supply. I mean, so many tanks. Has perfectly read this map, but here we go. The Roach surround. Oh, the tanks are exposed. Biles go down, but the siege shots are going to go off. The Roaches, I mean, this is such a good concave. You have 1-1 versus 1-1. I don't know if the tank counts quite matter. The bio is starting to fall, but the Roach count is also faltering. And Clem, with the double factory tank production, gives him just enough punch in this army to stop Reynor from collapsing and ending the game there. And that was without the +1 vehicle weapons. I mean, again, it's Curious Minds, so of course it's a great map for Roaches. But even then, I mean, Clem has such a good read on this situation. As he just got stim forward, he has +1/+1 bio. He has tanks supporting it. Roaches do not fight well into bio on even upgrades. You need to be ahead, and even with this +2, you know, coming through for Reynor, it's not going to be long before Clem has his own. There's more roaches in production. It's only 72 workers for Reynor. Clem sitting at 73, fully saturated. 75 now. Shouldn't build anymore with 2-2 finishing up. The Ghost Academy on the way. But Clem is going to look to push. Has the 2-2. The tanks have +1. It is such a deadly army here for the young Frenchman. And sitting, I mean, at a comparable supply to the Zerg is always a situation that Reynor's not going to be comfortable with. He's not going to be happy with. Now, he's going to force the army back. Has a Roach counterattack here, but still so hard to commit on in. These tanks sitting behind the fog of war with the vision from the Xel'Naga Watchtower. So dangerous for Reynor to try and collapse on that position, but the Lurker Den is finishing up. Hydralisks are already out on the map, so pretty soon Reynor will have that extra defensive tool as the tanks have been inched forward. Reynor still just stimming in, trying to find damage, and now the rest of the tanks are here. I mean, it's 9 tanks at 11 minutes through this game. This is absolutely insane. Reynor, there's not much you can do. He went roaches, and Clem went exactly what you need to stop roaches, which is so many tanks with +1. As Clem's just going to continue to push this position, Reynor has dropped 20 supply behind, and I don't think there's much you can do as a Zerg to hold this. Just a perfectly handled game from Clem as, oh, Lurkers have morphed in. Stim down 1, already eliminated though, and the tanks, I mean, they can just fire away. Clem just collapses on in. He has so many tanks, he has so much bio. It doesn't matter if you have Lurkers, because guess what? Clem is gonna win the game. Reynor drops to 130 supply. GG's out. And yeah, a decisive game 1 from Clem. And that's something that I don't think you give a lot of credit to some Terran players for, is if you know your timings are good and you hit them, you can just make it work. Now, that game wasn't just, of course, you know, oh wow, Clem played so much better than Reynor. Of course, it did come a lot down to the builds. And to be completely honest, it was quite unfortunate for Reynor, but the situation that Clem forced him into is what's really kind of ingenious about it, where Clem goes for this really early version of a Hellbat attack, and of course that's going to force out early roaches to defend it. So you get 6 roaches right off the bat, and so you get those 6 roaches out, and as Reynor, you don't just want to build 6 roaches and then, you know, not do anything with them. So you're going to continue to build roaches, you're going to try and apply pressure, and then once you've done that, you're really committed to that attack. And so Reynor got into the +1/+1. He committed to the roach tech. And Clem, I mean, without really even seeing too much of it, of course, you have some hints about what Reynor's going to be going. Double factory tank. 5 racks, double tank production, +1. Doesn't even consider Widow Mines. And especially on a map like, I can't remember the name of it, but especially on that Game 1 map, it makes sense because that is a map where roaches are very good. There's a lot of angles for attacking. There's a lot that you can do to try and find surrounds, and so going for double tank anyway is just a good idea because it transitions so well into the late game regardless. So Reaper gets low, but, or not the Reaper, but the Ling does get low. Reaper unable to find the kill, however. And Clem going back to his roots here in this game with the fast 3cc. I'm just a little bit tired. Not too bad, as the third base has gone down uncontested for Reynor. And yeah, Clem going back to his roots a little bit. This is the build that Clem would do all of the time a while ago. And I think it was one of the reasons why his TVZ started to have issues, was because it was very predictable. Was the issue. And of course, Clem was great at the fast 3cc into bio, you know, maybe use Banshees. He was really good at that strategy, but if you knew he was going it, you could counter it really efficiently. So that, I think, really became an issue for Clem, so I like that he's mixed up. Of course, still, you go for the fast 3rd CC. It's still good. Especially on a large map like Glittering Ashes. It's completely fine to go for something like this because there's not really going to be a chance for the Zerg to pressure you. There's not really going to be a chance for the Zerg to go for a super early attack just because It's such a large map. The rush distance is so long as, ooh, CV does go down. The lings will be cleaned up. And it does look like Clem is going to go into the completely standard version of this build, which is the Cloak Banshee. Viking, of course, comes out first, and then the Banshee to follow. And we'll have that third CC being placed on location as soon as the natural is saturated. Oh no, actually, a Raven. Oh, the Overlord side. Okay. I was going to say, what's the reason for that switch? The Overlord that was killed did end up seeing the Cloak starting, so Clem just switches over to a Raven, which is, I think, just as good of an option. If you don't know why the Raven is good in TVZ, one of the main reasons, while yes, it is hard to keep it alive, you do not have to use scans to clear creep in the early game. You get the anti-armor missile, of course, and also the auto turrets are very good if you're just fighting queens. So for Hellbat attacks, that can be very, very nice. But its main resource is, of course, anti-armor missile in the late game, and then clearing up creep. You don't have to use those scans. You can actually mule for longer than you usually would, which is one of the main things that limits, I think, the expansion of Terrans in the early game, is the balance of, okay, now I can't mule anymore. I have to save up this energy for scans, or else the Zerg is just going to get infinite creep spread, and I'm going to get absolutely rolled over. And that's what stops Terrans from really just mule hammering the whole game and then getting up into 4 bases and this massive economy, is that you do need to slow down the Zerg. With the Raven, you have an option there to kind of be a little bit more flexible with it. So I do want to see where that Raven is. There we go, with the Hellions. So again, Clem can just push on in. Won't necessarily need to use a scan if he brings the Raven over, and can just clear up these active creep tumors. And can even use the Raven itself to clear them up if he wants to, but the Hellions, obviously a lot more efficient at that. As auto turret goes down, Raven just is going to pull back, and you're going to use a lot of transfuse energy because, well, the Queen's focus a lot on that auto turret. You see there the HP, so nice. As the transition for Clem is just the usual. It is your $150, your standard. Run by coming through from Reynor, able to clear up the mule and a few of those SCVs. Of course, always worthwhile as, ooh, this is a bit dangerous here. Not enough Marines out to really deal with these lings. Clem, we have to bring the SCVs over, try and pocket them into one spot as the Hellions are forced back to deal with it. 6 SCVs go down, and, well, Reynor going to be pretty happy with that because now he's getting up into a 4th base. He's going to be working on his ling upgrades. The +1/+1 for melee attacks, and Carapace on the way. And really, I mean, Reynor's not going to have any trouble with this. As another ling run by is going to come through. Right as Clem wants to push out with these Hellions once again. And you're going to try and fight this with the Marines. You just don't quite have enough to deal with it. More going to come into support. And finally, we'll clean it up with the SCVs being brought over. But all of these moves are just going to slow down Clem, who still has these 10 Hellions, but they're sitting at home, which is not exactly where you want them. These 10 Hellions, eventually you want to try and commit them into a mineral line. You want to use them to clear up creep, and that's just not what they're able to do right now. Reynor, of course, hasn't been super aggressive with the creep spread. Has been just been keeping it between the bases and a little bit outside of them. As the Raven just continuing to be annoying currently. Just got those 2 drone kills. As a double drop going to come through for Clem. Their mine off on the Queens. Going to just continue to clear up this creep. And Clem currently sitting at 140 supply. Another one mine shot goes off. More transfusions used. And Drilling Claws on the way. I believe currently should be sitting at the 2 factories, 5 racks. Do have the Widowmine Cloak done because the armory is finished. This Clem just being so aggressive. I mean, constant pressure on Reynor's side of the map, save for when the Ling counterattacks were being used to try and slow him down, but Clem just being absolutely relentless here on Glittering Ashes. Currently sitting 20 supply in the lead. This is not usually what you see. Ling Bane is an army composition that has a lot, you get a lot of supply. Of course, it's not as much as Road Ravager, but still, you should be ahead of the Terran opponent. As here we go, Stim gonna try and kill off these Queens, but there's so much energy left on them. A good Widowmine shot to clear up some of the Lings. As Clem is gonna try and push 2 positions at once, and guess what? These Hellions weren't used to dive into mineral lines, so now we got 10 Hellbats. And, well, definitely are a bit of a danger here for these Zerglings. Roasty Toasty Barbecue. Clem. It's not what you expect, but I guess an 850 timing attack with Hellbats can also do the trick, as you do have a few Hydralisks that are out, but is it enough? These are slow Baneling. Where's Baneling's speed? Wait a second. I think Reynor made a mistake here. He doesn't have Baneling speed. The base goes down. That's an absolute misstep. You should have that upgrade at this point in the game. As Marine's going to come forward, the Hellbat's just tanking so much. Finally, Baneling's speed is finished, but Reynor has lost so much. At the same time, Marine's fighting the Queens. As the one-mind shot is dragged by the Overseer. Going to have to pull it back, but Clem finds damage, and it's absolutely worthwhile. Cleans up so many Banelings. I mean, stops the base. Of course, Reynor sitting at 88 workers, but I believe, yeah, should be oversaturated. You know, has a massive economy right now, but is only at 4 hatcheries. A 5th is going to be added on, but you just do not have a lot of larvae right now to use for Reynor, and that might be an issue because Clem right now is looking to power push. Clem right now is going to be setting up Widow Mines. He's going to be looking to find damage, and there's not much that I think Reynor has right now. More Banelings being morphed on in, but is it enough? 7? I don't think so. Widow Mine's going to burrow down. They have the speed burrow now as the Marines just fighting straight up. And, well, Hydras are good, but they're not good at fighting straight up. Marines will just beat them as this fight is absolutely scrappy. But look at the supply. It is dropping for Reynor. And all that target fire onto the Observers was absolutely delicious. Clem gets rid of so many Banelings with that target fire. That was beautiful. And once again, Clem trying to start to pull apart his opponent. The Widow Mine's doing so much damage. A tank now being set on up. The Marines continuing to fight the Unburrow. And now once again, the Unburrow Clem. Reynor's supply is dropping. Clem looks like he's gonna go up 2-0. Even if it's not with this push, it's gonna be with the next. Because he's 40 supply in the lead. Absolutely insane from the young Frenchman. And he's on 4 bases. A 5th CC being constructed. 2-2 available for this bio, starting on 3-3 already. And I mean, Reynor, he has a high Hydralisk count, but they don't have any attack upgrades. It's +0 attack Hydras. And so Clem can just continue to push this. The Queens as well, no attack upgrades. They are just tankiness. They are used for the HP, and that is it. As the Banelings, trying to roll on through, but there's just not a lot of them left. The Lynx drag the mine shots, but it still does not do enough damage. More Banelings trying to come through. It doesn't matter. Clem going up 2-0. My oh my. 2-0 is where we're at. I mean, even though I believe that Clem would win this series, I definitely feel like Clem right now, his form is just a little bit better. I didn't think it was going to be in this fashion. I did not think it was going to be in this fashion. Sorry about that. It's just looked really clean. It's looked like Clem has had some great reads on the game. He's been hitting his timing attacks almost perfectly. And there's just really not a lot that Clem or that Reynor has been able to do. He's just been kind of outdone, which is crazy to think about. And now we're on to Blackburn, which of course is a map that can be a little bit better for the Zerg, just because of the gold base, because you can really try and force your timing attacks through. I mean, Reynor in game 1, was going to try and hit that, maxed out Roach timing, but it really didn't end up coming to avail, unfortunately. So we'll see how this game goes. I mean, I believe this is from the winner's bracket, or the upper bracket. So even if whichever player does end up losing here, if Reynor is able to claw it back into a, into a reverse sweep or something along that line, Clem's not going to be out. He will still have a chance to qualify. Same for Reynor. Will have a chance to qualify in the close qualifiers. So it's not over for either of these players, and honestly, both of them are good enough that they should probably make it. I mean, your usual suspects for, of course, Europe are Hero Marine, Reynor, Serral, Clem, and that's kind of the list. That's the top 4 that everyone says, okay, they should make it into most of these big tournaments, and hopefully that will be the case because they're all phenomenal players. in their own rights and with how they approach the game. As this opening has been pretty standard. Sorry about the breaks, just taking a few drinks of water, but a pretty standard opening from both these players. I mean, Clem, I think, did open very interestingly in game 1. But, of course, game 2 played it completely standard, still got the win there. And so I think is not going to really stress about trying to do anything too crazy, about trying to throw off his opponent. And I don't think he needs to. Especially right now, it feels like Clem is kind of, I think, a step ahead of Reynor when it comes to current form. And so, you know, I think he's really shown, especially in this series, his micro is still so good. And his timing attack is so potent. And it's been very hard for Reynor to deal with that so far. And I'd like to see Reynor get on the offensive a little bit. I think Reynor does need to try and be aggressive, just because there hasn't really been a lot of options for him when he's been stuck on the defensive end. And yeah, we do have actually a lot of lings coming out now. So 12 lings in production. There's already 12 on the map. Excuse me. So we're going up to, 24, and now a few more added on. So we're going to get a very large ling flood here from Reynor. And I don't know if it's because he expects something, but this looks completely like, oh, no, slow surround doesn't work out. But this does just look like the kind of build you do if you want to try and get some damage done. As the drop comes through from Clem. Enough lings to deal with it, though. Still does feel like Reynor. I don't want to say overproduced, but built a lot of Zerglings for this. Usually, 18, 20 is fine. Went up to 26. So that drone production is going to be just a little bit behind for our Italian Zerg. Currently sitting at 46. We'll get up above 50 with this round of drones as he adds on the Baneling Nest and the additional gases. And again, another big story of that last game was just that there was no Baneling speed when there needed to be. It was 8 minutes in, no Baneling speed. It's just, you need to have it for those attacks. And the fact that Reynor didn't really ended up hurting him is the, surround onto the Hellions. Reynor going to be able to clean all of this up. Clem tries to dive on in. Just does not end up working out. Now the Marines trying to pressure into the main base, but the medevac going to be focused down. Has to pick up, get on out. There's more barracks being added on Stim. Going to be finishing up here for Clem fairly shortly. As Reynor is just doing the good old trusty standard. Not doing anything too crazy. We have centrifugal hooks as well on the way. Currently at 58 workers for Reynor. Again, still a very low amount. Of course, you're getting the 4th base up, so you're going to be able to mine from the gold. But even then, on a map like Blackburn, usually you want to be sitting around the 68 mark is where I think most Zergs are going to feel comfortable in their macro, unless you are going to be looking for some sort of a timing attack. And right now, that doesn't look to be the case. 18 lings, you're going to be remaking a few banelings. You're going to have enough to defend if there is an attack coming shortly. Doesn't look like there is going to be. Clem just establishing his 3rd base, working on his +1/+1. Doesn't even have combat shields done, just the stim pack itself. Sorry. But more lings on the way. So Reynor, 60 workers is actually going up to a very high ling count. And this is a big counterattack coming in from Reynor. And Clem's pushing at the same time. Oh, this timing. Oh, the door's open! Oh no, Reynor. He's going to make his way onto the natural at the very least. Going to start to try and break down these supply depots. He's going to have to pull away, but there's a lot of worker kills available here. And they have to run straight through the Zerglings. The army is being brought back, but this has already gotten the damage done that it needed to. It slowed down Clem. It caused him to bring everything back. And now Ling's also going to go into the 3rd. Clem, do you have enough to deal with all this? I don't think you do. Reynor being absolutely relentless right now. And the 3rd base is forfeit. Just aggression here from Reynor. More Lings on the way. Sitting at 67 army supply. Going to look once again to try and push the front, but Banelings are now morphed in. They have speed. They're going to be able to break down the supply depots at the same time. The army also being focused. The Baneling focus fire is good, but it's not good enough. Has to pick on up. The one mine shot does go off. It might not matter though, because there's just so much here for Reynor that's streaming across the map. The third base is gonna go down, and that is enough damage. That, I mean, it's game-ending damage. Losing the third base, GG is called. Reynor gets one back. And we're on to Hardwire, which is definitely a map that has a bit of history. Especially when you're looking at recently, with recent tournaments, how those finals have gone. This has been the map of all maps. And I think it's just because it's the layout is so nice. If you look at Hardwire, I mean, the base layout itself is very conducive towards having fun games, with how you have, you know, these high grounds that you can play around with, where you have, you know, these additional bases on the low ground. They're harder to take, and so it oftentimes means that when you get into the late game, you have really, really interesting games around it and around how you're expanding and what bases you need to then take. But it also means the games can go very short. You can have games on this map end in 8 minutes. Absolutely. It's a bit harder because you do have this, you know, it's sure it's a large choke into the natural base, but it's still very hard to kind of close out the game early. But I think it's one of my favorite maps, definitely. I think it's a good one. It's a keeper, is what it is. And we'll see what Clem's kind of build choice is here, because 2 games in a row has, of course, gone for, has, of course, gone for the fast third CC. And right now, you do see the second gas going down, so it's not going to be immediately into that third command center, which I'm very happy to see. Hardwire is a map that you can't really afford to get away with that greediness on. You know, on something like Blackburn, on something like Glittering Ashes, you absolutely can, you know, go for a really fast third command center, and there's not much that the Zerg can do to punish you. Sorry, we weren't paying attention to the Reaper there. Didn't really get any kills though. But yeah, this is a map where definitely I'm liking to see that Clem is not going to be going for that option. As on the side of Reynor, I think one of the real things you got to consider is, okay, you won that last game because you got the Ling Flood in, and Clem really wasn't expecting it. That doesn't work again. I don't think there's really any way that that is going to work a second time. And so how do you approach this, considering that you've lost 2 macro games and that the only game you won was that very quick, you know, 8-minute Ling Flood? It's a hard question for Reynor, because I think right now Clem's macro is kind of stellar. It's really good. And I think Clem's build orders have been extremely tight. And his read on the game in general has been very solid. As well, this push in here, I'm going to be able to at least kill off a few of the Zerglings, but that should be about it. Hellion and the Reaper make their way onto the main base. You're going to see the drones pulled away, more Lings coming out and try and focus down the Hellion. A single drone goes down. A second might end up falling. Very nice focus fire there from Clem. I mean, gets 2 drones. That's not exactly what you want. Won't actually even get the third. And these Hellions might go down as well. Zerglings coming in for the surround. Can't quite get it. As Reynor trying to be all over the map, but these Lings as well going to get caught out. Wall lift off nicely. Third command center going to be started up, and all in all, not that much damage going down either way. You just see the 2 work kills, and the 9 Lings go down for 2 Reapers and a Hellion, or 2 Hellions and a Reaper. 2 Reapers and a Hellion. What's that? No one does that. I don't know what I'm saying, but all in all, not that much damage. Now we will see this Liberator pushing out, and this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting with how much damage Clem is going to be able to get. You do have a Spore Crawler that was finished in the mineral lines for Reynor, but fortunately, positioning for a Banshee is just a little bit different than positioning for a Liberator. As you're going to see that little micro dance between those units. The Hellions just poking around. Ooh. Almost think they found their way on into the base, but decide maybe not the best to commit on in. And we're just going to see Clem behind this, adding on his additional barracks. Stim, +1/+1. So you are going to be looking eventually for a timing attack if you are Clem. as the third base has been saturated and you are, kind of hitting your macro cycles properly. As the Liberator still hanging out, hasn't been able to get any damage. Queens and Spore Crawlers in position to deal with it. The only place where it's not is probably the third base. It's going to be hard to get the Liberator all the way over there. As right now, Reynor just on that drone production. 10 more coming through. He's going to get above 60 with the fourth base on the way. And right as Clem is moving away, or moving his third onto location. And with the ground upgrades coming through, it's going to be Ling Bane once again, which is kind of the standard. Again, I think Roaches have fallen out of favor unless you are on a map like, Hardwire is actually a decent map for Roaches just because you have multiple attack angles. And so you can kind of hit that 180 Roach attack that you see some players go for. But that definitely just seems like one that Reynor not as keen on going, especially when you see, a player like Clem who is absolutely willing to just go double factory tank production. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'll do that. That's fine. And we do see that. I think Clem does a really good job of recognizing what maps what builds and compositions are possible on what map. And so Hardwire is definitely one where Roaches are viable. Those Roach attacks are viable, so it goes into the tank instead of the Widow Mines right off the bat. Now you do have this counterattack from Reynor right as the force moves out from Clem. And how many times does Reynor do this? These counterattacks are just so deadly. A tank going to be able to at least clean up a few of these Lings, but some SCVs will fall. But it's a full push coming out at the front for Clem, and that should be a very, very canceled fifth base here from Reynor. No, that's a kill. Oh my, that should not happen. Reynor's not quite paying attention. Now you have the Hellbats pushing on through. Focus fire onto the Banelings. Clem. Oh, all the Banelings go down. Absolutely beautiful. Now going to try and lift up on into the main. The Liberator has come through, found a position. 7 workers go down. The pickups come out. This Liberator still alive. Clem being so annoying right now. Queens should eventually clean it up though. And this drop still trying to be annoying, using the ledge here to clean up an Overlord. And also to protect the Marines that do try and ferry up onto the high ground. Will have to evacuate this position eventually. But second factory on the way. Drilling Claws started up, and it's going to be double factory, triple mine production out of Clem. So recognizes, hey, listen, you're not going Roaches. I got my 3 safety tanks, so I'm just going to now go into my usual army with the Widow Mines, and that's absolutely the right call to make in this situation. As +1/+1 is done for the Terran. Gonna try and keep pushing. Oh, that Baneling focus fire is absolutely beautiful. Just Clem taking small skirmishes here and there, has another force moving out to clear up creep, and just constantly applying pressure here to the Zerg. Reynor has not been able to really get out of his base since that double drop. That first one moved out. And Clem doing such a good job of cleaning up these Banelings, and that's really the main thing that you have to do, as it's actually, interestingly enough, 2 Liberators on the way for Clem. He's going to be adding that in. We'll see if it's for harassment or if it's going to be for a push. See, he's continuing to clear up creep. The Ling Bane trying to respond as best as it can, but responding in 2 positions at once with Ling Bane is so hard, especially at this level. Clem just finds 8 more drone kills. Knocks Reynor down to 72. He's only 4 behind, with a 4th base being established himself. Cancels the 5th once again. Right now, Reynor, he's just waiting for his 2-2. He's waiting to get Hydras out. He's waiting to get into his Lurkers, and there's not much as the Zerg that you can do in this situation aside from wait and try and defend. And that just means that really you have to stomach these losses. Now that you have Hydras out, of course, you're going to have a bit of a better time dealing with it. You can force the medevacs back. You don't have to be using your Queens to defend as much. But here we go. Look at this position. I actually love this. 2 Liberators only added on for this push from Clem is going to stop the high ground from mining, allow the tank to be safe, and then also protect from surrounds coming through from the Zerg. This is so well done by Clem. He's going to pick up. He also has a drop going into the main. That spawning pool is under fire, and if that goes down, that's an absolutely massive pickoff. Another one has to be immediately started up by Reynor as Clem absolutely abusing this map. And this is just so much improvement from Clem in the past few, months even, in how he's been playing to the map pool, how he's been using these positions. It's so nice to see. And now Reynor, he's down 30 supply, 20 supply. You should not be down this much. Clem's up in workers. Clem's up in army and workers. He's 74 workers to 58. Clem has +2/+2, whereas just the +1 ground attacks and +1 armor of the Sling Bane. He can continue to push this position. I mean, and again, the Hydralisks, they don't have any upgrades. They're getting group spines for the +1 range, but that's, you know, even then, you don't have any attack upgrades. The Hydras themselves do not do a lot of damage versus the +2 armor of these Marines, as Clem continuing to micro on 2 fronts. A bout of micro as Clem is going to try and knock down this 4th base. He's gotten it below half HP. Tries to stim forward, has to pull back as the Banelings roll through. This delicate dance, the Baneling Focus Fire is good, but they finally get a connection. As Clem now moving another army out, should actually be able to catch the army of Reynor as he was trying to look for attack himself. Oh my, the Widowmine hits. Oh, so beautiful. As the whole army is here, that means that the 4th base goes down. Clem is just going to be chased back. He can lift off as many units as he can and get on out of dodge. He's cleaned up the base. He's cleaning up the queens. And Reynor, he was going to look for a counterattack, but that gets completely stifled because now Clem knows about it. And that means that Clem can bring his units back. He can continue on with the base trade. And Reynor, he has to try and end the game here. Yeah, that's it. He has to try and end the game here. He can't do much else. Oh, Widowmine shots are absolutely massive. It's not going to work out. GG. Clem takes it 3-1.